You're scuffing the marble.
The voice snapped like a whip from across the lobby, sharp, cold, and laced with disdain. The woman who said it didn't even stop walking. She barely looked at the man pushing a stroller, just flicked her eyes at the janitor's cart beside him and the faint trail of water left from a mopped floor. Noah didn't flinch. He paused, shifted his daughter's blanket in the stroller with one hand, and quietly set the mop back in the bucket. Then he looked up. "The blood won't care what floor it lands on," he said flatly. She stopped, turned, and for the first time, actually looked at him. Subscribe now. This isn't a feel-good story about kindness. This is about what happens when the only person you tried to humiliate becomes the one person who can save your legacy. And he doesn't owe you mercy. He wasn't supposed to talk like that. Not in this building. Not in this suitless, security guard-watched corner of the world where status whispered and uniforms meant you stepped aside. But Noah didn't step aside. Not when it mattered. His name was stitched onto the breast of his faded blue uniform, just above a rust stain. The stroller beside him had a cracked wheel and a missing canopy. The girl inside it, maybe 3 years old, held a stuffed bear missing one eye. She looked up when the voice came, her little hand tightening on the side rail. She wasn't afraid, just used to it. The woman across from him stood in the soft glow of recessed lighting and polished stone, flanked by a pair of assistants, her coat slung over one arm like royalty in exile. Celeste Valen, CEO of Valen Urban Group, property baron. PR perfect image of power and elegance. And she didn't like messes, especially not ones with mop water and strollers and janitors who talked back. "You're not allowed to bring children onto the executive floor," she said, her voice cooler now. "It's a liability." "She's safer here than most people," Noah replied. The assistant beside Celeste leaned in to whisper something. Celeste nodded without breaking eye contact, then turned away, just like that. Dismissed. But as her heels clicked away toward the velvet elevator corridor, she tossed one last glance over her shoulder. The kind that wasn't anger, it was confusion. Like she'd seen a dog sit at a dinner table and use a fork. The stroller creaked as Noah pushed it forward again. He didn't speak to Maya. Not yet. The silence between them was like a shared language, one she understood better than most adults. They rounded the corner into the janitor's lounge. Dull walls, a vending machine with only root beer left, plastic chairs stacked crooked against one wall. He set the stroller beside a crate of cleaning supplies, sat down slowly, and rubbed the back of his neck. He'd known this job wouldn't be easy, but he hadn't expected it to feel like holding your breath all day, every day, just to keep your daughter close. He reached into the side pouch of the stroller and pulled out a folded paper, his daughter's next neurology appointment, out-of-pocket costs circled in red. He didn't have it, not unless he worked another overnight double and took the Sunday slot no one wanted. Maya murmured in her sleep. He touched her forehead, still warm. Her doctor said the tremors might come back. Noah didn't wait for might. He prepared. Downstairs, the glass elevators hummed softly. Security buzzed. The marble glistened. Everything looked expensive enough to be sterile, until someone collapsed on it. But that came later. For now, the only crack in the illusion was a janitor with a soldier's hands, a toddler who didn't cry, and a woman who couldn't quite name the feeling that crept into her gut when the man in the blue uniform looked her dead in the eyes and spoke like someone who knew how people broke, knew how they bled, and maybe worse, knew how to stop it. "Where are you watching from?" Because she's about to find out the hard way you can pay for silence, for power, for beauty. But when someone you love starts dying in front of you, Only one kind of person knows what to do, and he's not wearing a nameplate that matters to her. Noah leaned against the mop handle, his eyes on the floor tiles that never stayed clean for long. He didn't mind the work. What scraped at him was the way people looked through him while he did it, as if his presence only registered when they needed a towel or a spill cleaned. Never as a person, just a maintenance function, a moving part in the background. He'd grown used to that. But today, that woman, Celeste, had looked straight at him. Not like she saw him. No, like she couldn't believe he existed in the same air as her. As if the very idea of a man like him pushing a child through her polished corridors was something she'd never considered. He'd seen that look before, in briefing rooms, in barracks, in rooms where men with shiny pins and hollow hearts decided what lives were worth saving. He knew how power masked fear. Across the lounge, Maya stirred again, her fingers rubbing the frayed ear of her bear. Her breath hitched but didn't break into a cry. She hadn't cried in public in almost 6 months. She'd learned fast. Quieter kids got fewer stares. She had her father's instinct for shadows. Noah wiped the sweat from his neck and glanced at the clock. He still had half a shift left. He'd been covering a second man's hours all week, and there was another overnight scheduled for Friday. He wasn't supposed to bring Maya, not technically, but the sitter he trusted had moved away, and the replacement, well, he'd made that mistake once. Never again. The security guard outside the break room gave him a quick nod through the small window. Noah returned it. They didn't speak much, but the guy didn't hassle him about Maya being there. Probably had kids of his own. Probably knew how quick the world turned cruel when no one was watching. He packed up the last of the cleaning supplies and checked the email on his phone. Another reminder from billing about the specialist appointment. Third notice. The amount hadn't changed. Just the tone. Less polite now, more final. He exhaled slowly and ran his hand over the stroller's worn handle. He could do this. He always did. Outside the break room, the temperature shifted. The polished floors, the chilled air, the smell of pine cleaner and artificial citrus, it was all designed to convince people nothing bad could happen here. A sanitized illusion. Noah had seen enough to know better. A group of executives passed him in the corridor, laughing loudly, holding tiny espresso cups and overpriced leather folders. One of them eyed the stroller, then made a face and veered wide, like poverty might rub off if he got too close. Noah didn't react. He just pushed forward, humming under his breath so Maya could hear him. He was heading to the main atrium, a massive space, with glass ceilings and a view that made the tourists stop and stare. There were fountains, sculpture installations, and an overpriced restaurant that served salmon with names Noah couldn't pronounce. He'd cleaned vomit off those floors before, wine spills, shoe scuffs. One time a shattered tablet that a broker had thrown when the market turned on him. But today the floor sparkled, clean enough to reflect back every fluorescent light overhead. He stopped to inspect one of the decorative planters near the east wall. Someone had left gum on the side. He knelt and started scraping it with a putty knife, glancing up just once to make sure Maya was still asleep. Then came the sound he didn't expect. A short, sharp gasp. Not a dramatic one, not the kind of scream you hear in movies. Just a breath cut off. Then a thud. Noah turned instinctively. Near the escalators, a woman lay motionless. Her purse was still on her shoulder. One arm was twisted beneath her belly. No one moved. No one. Two valet staff looked at each other, frozen. A couple at the cafe stood half-risen from their seats, phones out, not dialing, recording. And then Noah saw her face. It was the woman from earlier. Not Celeste. The other one. The one who'd walked behind her. Younger. Sweeter face. Softer eyes. And very, very pregnant. His boots squeaked once against the marble as he stood up straight. Then he moved. He was already across the atrium before anyone else had taken a step. He knelt beside her, set his hand gently on her shoulder, and angled her away from the pressure on her stomach. Her breath was shallow, her skin slick. He recognized the signs instantly: low blood pressure, possible preeclampsia. Maybe worse. "Ma'am?" he said softly, but she didn't respond. He glanced around. Still no one helping. They were waiting, watching, hoping someone in a uniform with a badge or a stethoscope would come solve it. He wasn't wearing either of those, but he knew what to do. And so, without asking, without waiting, Noah reached behind him, took off his belt, and folded it into a pressure support roll. He worked silently, calmly, his eyes scanning her limbs, her abdomen, her pupils. Behind him, he heard the sound of heels, sharp, rapid, closing in. Celeste. He didn't look up. Not yet. There were more important things to do. Her voice cracked the air like glass. "Get away from her." Noah didn't move. His hand was steady on the woman's wrist, checking her pulse again as he adjusted the pressure point near her hip. He'd positioned her in a modified recovery angle, careful not to restrict blood flow to the fetus. She was breathing, but faintly, and the color in her face was still wrong. Too pale, too fast. Celeste's heels stopped inches away, her perfume hitting first, something expensive and overwhelming like white flowers and steel. "I said back off. You're not a doctor." Her voice trembled, not with fear, with fury. "I was," Noah said, still not looking up. A hush fell over the glass atrium. People were watching now: mall guests, retail staff, even 2 security guards at the edge of the corridor. No one stepped in. No one stepped closer. "You're going to kill her," Celeste spat. "No," he said calmly, "but if you keep yelling, you might." He finally raised his eyes. Her hands were clenched at her sides. She looked like she wanted to drag him off the floor herself, but she didn't touch him. She looked at the woman on the floor, at her daughter, and froze. "I already called the medics," she said, quieter this time. "Then let them come," Noah answered. "But until they get here, this is the only chance she has." Jenna twitched then. Her lips parted like she was about to speak, but only a thin moan escaped. Her hands fluttered weakly across her midsection, unable to hold or protect. Celeste dropped to her knees, all pretense of detachment shattered. "Jenna, baby, I'm here. I'm here." Noah watched her hands hover, unsure of where to touch. She didn't know how to help. She just needed to feel like she was doing something. He kept his voice low. "She needs to stay as calm as possible. She's losing oxygen faster than she can stabilize it." Celeste looked at him, not like he was a janitor anymore, like he was the only one keeping her daughter alive. "What's happening to her?" "Possible placental abruption, maybe eclampsia. She's compensating with shallow breaths. If she goes unconscious, I'll need to intervene again." "How do you—" She started, but didn't finish. The question died before it reached her lips. Noah reached into his back pocket and pulled out a pen light. It was scuffed, old, a relic from another life. He gently opened Jenna's eyelids, checking pupil dilation. "She's responding, just slow." "Has she had blurred vision? Headaches? Nausea?" Celeste blinked. Yes. Yesterday she said she felt dizzy. I thought it was just nerves. She hasn't been sleeping. Noah didn't respond to that. He was too focused. He counted Jenna's pulse again and placed the folded belt under her back to elevate one side. Behind them, the crowd had grown, quiet, breathless. A security guard stepped forward, holding back others with an open palm. The man didn't say a word, just watched Noah work with the kind of silence that came from respect. Sirens wailed in the distance, closer now. Celeste wiped her cheek with the back of her hand, Her voice was smaller than before. She was coming to talk. I didn't know she was that far along. She said she had news. Noah nodded once. She still might? The paramedics arrived seconds later, two in full gear, one with a portable monitor. They moved fast, efficient, trained. But when they saw how Jenna was positioned and the signs noted in Sharpie on the tile beside her, Noah had written down BP estimates and symptom timeline. They paused. One of them, a tall woman with cropped hair and a scar above her left eye, looked at Noah and said, "You a medic?" "Used to be," he replied. She crouched down, took Jenna's wrist, and nodded. "You did good. We'll take it from here." Noah rose, wiped his hands on his uniform pants, and stepped back. The moment passed like a wave moving through glass, tense, quiet, then shifting with a sudden breath. Jenna was stabilized, strapped carefully to a gurney, oxygen mask secured. Her eyes fluttered open once. They landed on Noah, then closed again. Celeste stood slowly, brushing off her knees. The crowd was thinning now, returning to its pretense of normalcy, but eyes still lingered. People still whispered. She didn't speak as the gurney was wheeled away. Noah watched until it disappeared through the elevator doors. Then he turned to collect his belt from the floor. It was damp, bent, a fraying relic tied to muscle memory. Celeste finally spoke, her voice hesitant, uncertain. "You were in the military?" "Yes." "Medic?" "Field surgeon." A pause. Then, "What the hell are you doing here?" "Same thing I was doing there," he said. "Trying to keep someone alive." She flinched like it stung. Her hands fidgeted at her coat hem, trying to compose themselves. He didn't give her time. Noah turned away, picked up Maya's stroller, and started walking. She was still asleep, but her tiny hand, resting on the side rail, curled tighter around the bear. The security footage was already circulating by the time Noah made it back to the break room. Someone had uploaded it to the mall's internal staff chat, just a short clip. A janitor kneeling beside a collapsed woman, while the CEO hovered helplessly behind him. No context, no sound, just raw motion. But that was all it needed. The visual contrast did the work. By the time the clip reached the second floor, whispers were already bouncing between shops and service counters like static. "Did you see what he did? Who even is that guy? Thought he was just maintenance." He knew exactly what to do. Noah didn't care about whispers. He cared about the call he just received from the pediatric specialist's office. Maya's appointment had been bumped, not canceled, just delayed due to a scheduling conflict. But even the delay meant rescheduling transport, shifting shifts, juggling bills with calendar windows. He rubbed his eyes and exhaled through his nose. In the stroller, Maya blinked sleepily at the ceiling tiles. Her lashes fluttered, then settled again. She wasn't fully awake, just aware enough to recognize her dad's footsteps, the rhythm of safety. He sat across from her, elbows on his knees, letting the silence settle between them. Then came the knock. Not a loud one. Just two quick taps on the doorframe. He looked up. It wasn't Celeste. It was Rhonda, one of the senior HR liaisons for the building, a woman who usually moved like she was late for something. Today, her pace was deliberate. She held a clipboard, but her hands didn't grip it tightly. "I don't want to interrupt," she said. "Can I come in?" Noah nodded. She stepped inside, eyes flicking to Maya, then back to him. "I just wanted to check in." He said nothing. Rhonda shifted her weight from one foot to the other. "You're probably aware that what happened earlier is already making waves. Executive wants to make sure we respond appropriately." "To what?" he asked. She hesitated. "To the event. To your role in it." Noah waited. He didn't help her. She glanced at the clipboard, as if it might offer more clarity than she could summon herself. There's talk of issuing a formal recognition, possibly revisiting your contract details, and Celeste, Ms. Valen, has expressed interest in speaking with you privately. He raised an eyebrow. To thank me? Rhonda offered a tight smile. That and other things, I believe. Noah leaned back in the chair. She humiliated me in front of her staff. Now she wants a meeting? She's under a lot of pressure, Rhonda said quickly. The footage paints a very public image. PR's pushing for transparency. They're calling it a hero moment. The public-facing side of our leadership failed. You didn't. That part landed. He watched her for a moment. She wasn't a bad person, just someone trying to ride the waves without drowning. He'd seen it before. Leadership set the tide. Everyone else tried not to get swept under. I don't want a spotlight, he said at last. I understand, she replied. But this building is talking, whether you want it to or not. You should at least have a say in what version of this story gets told. Noah nodded once. That, he understood. She turned to leave but paused at the door. For what it's worth, my sister's a nurse. She saw the footage. Said your handling was textbook perfect? He didn't smile, but something in his shoulders eased. After she left, he sat quietly for a few more minutes. Then he stood, straightened his uniform, and adjusted the stroller canopy. Maya stirred. Her voice came out in a tiny mumble. Is the lady okay? He crouched beside her, brushing a curl from her cheek. She's going to be okay. Good. Her fingers tightened around the bear. You helped her. I tried, he whispered. Back out in the corridor, the world had shifted. Not dramatically, not like flipping a switch, but people moved differently now when he passed. They didn't flinch away from the stroller. Some nodded. Some gave half smiles. And some just avoided eye contact completely, uncertain where to place the memory of what they'd seen. When he reached the elevator lobby, the doors opened before he pressed the button. Celeste stood inside, alone. She didn't look surprised to see him. Her coat was folded over her arm again, and her phone remained in her pocket. No assistance, no defense. He didn't step in. She stepped out. The door slid shut behind her. I wanted to speak to you, she said. Noah adjusted the stroller. HR mentioned. I wasn't kind to you, she said slowly. That's not a secret. He waited. I assumed I understood your role, that I could trust the boundaries between staff and executive space to stay clean and clear. I was wrong. Noah watched her face. She wasn't rehearsing. She wasn't grandstanding. She was just stripped of certainty. He said nothing. Celeste looked down at Maya. She reminds me of Jenna, she murmured, when she was that age, always holding on to something. A doll, a ribbon, a scrap of paper, anything she could use to feel steady. Maya blinked at her, then turned into the blanket. I'm sorry, Celeste said softly. The silence held for a moment longer. Then Noah said, You'll get one chance to make that apology mean something. She nodded once. He walked past her without another word. Behind him, she didn't follow. The medical director of the paramedic team stopped by the next morning. It wasn't a formal visit, just a quiet entrance through the service corridor and a conversation over black coffee poured into a paper cup. He didn't wear a lab coat, didn't bring an assistant or a clipboard, just walked in like someone who knew how to move through a building without being noticed. Noah was changing a trash bag in the back corridor when he looked up and saw the man waiting. Late 50s, tight haircut, surgical hands, even at rest. You're the one who stabilized the Valen girl? He asked. Noah nodded once, tying the knot at the top of the bag. She's doing fine, the man said. Thanks to you, placental separation. You bought her the 10 minutes we couldn't. Noah didn't reply. Just move to the next trash can. The man followed. I don't do compliments, but my lead paramedic told me she hasn't seen field stabilization that clean in a decade. Said you were in the Army? Noah's hands paused for a moment, then continued moving. Did 2 tours. Last was as senior trauma lead, surgical evac, and field response. The man crossed his arms. Why the hell are you pushing a mop? Noah didn't answer that. He didn't need to. The man waited another beat, then pulled something from his inside pocket, a card. Handed it over. If you ever want to come back, we could use someone like you. Training, consulting, even ground team work. I can't promise much, but I can promise people would listen. Noah took the card, didn't look at it, just nodded and slid it into his back pocket. The man left without another word. Noah stood alone in the corridor for a long time after that, the trash bag forgotten at his feet. His chest didn't rise or fall any faster, but there was something behind his eyes now, not regret, just the ghost of a door he had closed a long time ago, rattling on its hinges again. Upstairs, Celeste was trying to regain control of the narrative. She sat in the boardroom, flanked by 2 PR consultants and her chief legal advisor. None of them spoke until she did. She tapped the table once. "Release the internal footage," she said. "Ma'am." One of the consultants blinked. "The atrium footage," Celeste clarified. "Release it publicly, with context. Add an overlay explaining what happened. Include his name. Noah Rains. Janitorial staff, former combat medic. Keep it factual." "But the optics," the PR woman started. Celeste looked at her. The woman shut up. "We're not going to pretend we saved the day," Celeste continued, "because we didn't. He did. And if the world finds out I dismissed him minutes before he saved my daughter's life, then so be it. They'll be right to judge me for it." The legal advisor cleared his throat. "Do you want to preemptively issue a personal statement?" "No," Celeste said. "Not yet." She stood pushing the chair back quietly. "If I issue anything, it will be to him, not the public." By the end of the day, the footage had over 200,000 views. News outlets picked it up by evening. Headlines swirled. "Single dad janitor saves pregnant woman in mall collapse." "CEO's daughter collapses." "Underpaid worker performs emergency intervention." "Former Army medic turned janitor rescues woman as executives watch." Noah didn't look at any of it. He wasn't interested in headlines. He'd seen too many stories spun too fast, the facts flattened into noise. He was interested in Maya's coloring book, in whether the specialist had new scheduling slots, in the creak the stroller made when turning left too sharply. But the world around him was changing. Other staff began nodding when he passed. The barista on the lower level handed him a coffee, without asking for payment. Someone from the floral kiosk gave Maya a silk ribbon, just because. And late that evening, while he was polishing the floor outside the elevator bank, a woman in a tailored skirt suit approached him quietly. She handed him an envelope, said nothing, walked away. Inside was a handwritten note. "Thank you, Jenna." In the quiet hours after closing, Noah stood by the tall windows of the atrium, staring down at the glass reflection of the city. It shimmered beneath him, cold, brilliant, indifferent. He didn't need their praise, but he wouldn't lie. He felt the shift, not just in how they looked at him, but in how Maya looked at him too. That night when they got home, she climbed into his lap with her bear and whispered, "Did you help that lady again today?" "No," he said softly. "Just cleaned up a little." "Will she say thank you?" He thought about that, about Jenna's letter, about Celeste's face when she realized the man she dismissed had steadied her world when it almost cracked in two. "She already did," he said, and that was enough. The boardroom smelled like polished wood and disinfectant. Noah could feel it before he entered. The kind of scent meant to hide something more sterile beneath. It was the same way military med tents always smelled after triage, a mix of bleach and failure. He stepped inside. The long mahogany table gleamed under artificial light. Chrome fixtures lined the walls, catching reflections from the city skyline outside. A tray of untouched pastries sat at one end. No one offered him coffee. Celeste was already seated at the head, a folder in front of her. She didn't stand when he walked in, didn't offer a smile. But her posture was different, straighter, not defensive, just braced. Noah took the chair across from her and waited. She cleared her throat. "I didn't ask you here to apologize again," she said. He said nothing. "I've made mistakes, some of them strategic, some of them personal, but this isn't about optics anymore. It's about acknowledging something I overlooked for far too long." Still, he said nothing. His eyes didn't even shift to the window. He watched her face like it might tell him more than her words ever could. "I've reviewed your personnel file," she continued. "It's lacking, almost suspiciously clean. No notes, no complaints, but nothing about your past either. You told them not to ask questions when you hired janitorial staff," he said quietly. Her eyes flickered. "You're right, I did. I needed work. I didn't want attention." "You didn't get any, until now." Silence stretched. She reached into the folder and slid a document across the table. "This is an offer. It's not PR. It's not charity. It's what I should have offered you before I ever knew your name." He glanced down. Emergency response consultant, flexible hours, medical insurance, partial child care, support. No requirement for relocation. Noah didn't pick it up. "You don't have to say anything now," Celeste added. "I just needed to offer it in person." "You don't know if I'll say yes," he said. "I don't expect you to," she replied. "But I hope you will." The door behind them opened without warning. Jenna stepped inside. Her skin still held the soft pallor of recovery, but her eyes were alert now, focused. She moved slowly but with purpose. A hand braced gently under her belly. "Hi," she said to Noah, her voice soft. He stood automatically. "You shouldn't be on your feet," he said. "I needed to say thank you," she replied. Properly. "I got your note." "I know, but that didn't feel like enough." Celeste rose slowly, as if unsure whether to help her daughter or stay seated. Jenna waved her off gently and walked to the empty chair beside Noah. "I don't remember everything," she said, "but I remember your voice. Calm. Like nothing could go wrong. That was the only thing that kept me from panicking." "You were braver than you know," Noah said. She shook her head. "You're the one who kept me alive." A pause. Then almost shyly, "And the baby." He nodded once. Celeste sat again, her eyes on her hands now. "I know this isn't what you asked for," Jenna said, glancing between them. "But the truth is, you gave us more than a medical save. You reminded this building that the people it tries to hide are often the ones holding everything together." Noah exhaled slowly. "Some people don't want to be seen," he said. "They want to do their job, raise their child, and not be part of anyone else's story." "Is that what you want?" Celeste asked. He looked at her, then at Jenna, then at the seat he'd been given in this towering glass building he never wanted to belong to. "I want Maya to grow up with choices," he said. "Not because someone gave them to her, because I kept doors open she never knew could close." The room held stillness for a moment. Jenna smiled. "I think you just answered your own question." He stood slowly, took the folder from the table and nodded once. Not agreement, just acknowledgement. Celeste rose too. "Whatever you decide," she said, "you changed this place, and me." He met her gaze. Then don't let it change back. He left the boardroom without waiting for more. In the corridor, he stepped into the elevator and pressed the ground floor. When the doors slid shut, he finally looked down at the folder in his hand. It wasn't the title that held his attention. It was the handwritten note paper-clipped inside. Maya deserves a future that doesn't cost you your peace. This is one step. Let us take the next one. JV. For the first time in a long while, Noah allowed himself to hope out loud. He whispered, "Maybe." The air in the maintenance garage was warmer than the rest of the building. Old. Radiators clicked from the walls, cycling uneven heat that clung to the concrete floor. The space smelled of oil, detergent, and something metallic that never quite went away. Noah was folding microfiber towels, sorting them into two bins, serviceable and scrap. He worked methodically, as if muscle memory had taken over while his mind traveled elsewhere. The folder sat on the bench beside him, unopened, since he left the boardroom. Every few minutes he glanced at it, then looked away. Maya was playing a few feet away, seated on an old moving blanket with her bear and a box of dried markers. She hummed softly, dragging colorless lines across the cardboard backing of a paper box. To her, this garage was just another quiet pocket of the world her father made safe. Noah bent down, picked up another towel, and wiped a spot of grease from the edge of his boot. He hadn't worn military-issue shoes in years, but the polish still clung to his routines. Scrape, fold, tuck, repeat. The door creaked behind him. He didn't look up. He knew the steps. Mark, the security guard, stepped inside and leaned against the frame. "You planning to ignore that offer until it expires?" Noah gave the faintest smile. "Wasn't aware there was a deadline." "There's always a deadline," Mark said. "They just don't all come with clocks." Noah tossed the last towel into the scrap bin. Mark pulled something from his jacket, an envelope, and held it out. "This came through internal channels. HR didn't want to use your mailbox. Said it might feel too transactional." Noah wiped his hands and took it. Inside was a handwritten note on high-quality cardstock. "Effective immediately. Your scheduled shifts are paused at full pay. This is not a termination. This is breathing room. Take it. CV." Noah stared at the paper for a long moment, then folded it in half and slipped it into the folder with the consultant contract. Mark crossed his arms. "You saved her kid." "She's trying to save face." "She's trying to change," Noah said. Mark shrugged. "Same thing." Silence passed between them, quiet but not cold. "People are talking, you know," Mark added. "Not in a bad way. They're just different around here since the video. It's like the place blinked and realized who's been holding it together from the floor up." Noah glanced at Maya. She had set the bear down and was now carefully stacking her markers into a wobbly tower. "I didn't want this," he said. "I know," Mark said, "but you earned it anyway." Noah sighed and sat on the edge of the workbench. "I don't want a spotlight. I don't want meetings. I don't want to be the symbol of someone else's redemption arc." "Then don't be," Mark said. "Just be the guy who shows up again when the next crisis hits. People will remember that a hell of a lot longer than a headline." Noah looked at the folder again. He didn't open it. He didn't need to. He'd already made up his mind. That night, he sat at the kitchen table after Maya had gone to sleep. The apartment was modest, one bedroom, the kind of place where every square foot counted. The walls were lined with old photographs, his late wife in uniform, his graduation from medical corps, a tiny photo of him and Maya when she was barely 3 days old. He unfolded the contract and read it slowly, every clause, every stipulation. It wasn't perfect, but it was fair. More than that, it was respectful. His name wasn't buried under formal language or footnotes. It was right there, typed clearly, as if someone finally understood it mattered. At the bottom of the page was a line that read, "This offer is contingent on the applicant's willingness to retain autonomy. No direct supervision will be assigned. All participation is voluntary." He almost laughed. It was the first time anyone had put those words on paper for him. He signed. The next morning, the elevator opened on the executive floor and no one tried to stop him. Noah stepped out, wearing his uniform still, creased but clean. The janitor's badge clipped to his belt, even though he wasn't expected to clean anything today. Celeste was waiting in the lounge near the windows, seated in the same chair she used during quarterly reviews. She stood when she saw him. No assistants, no flash, just her. "Consultant badge will be ready next week," she said. "For now, you'll have full access to the safety and operations levels." Noah nodded. "I want you to oversee crisis readiness," she continued. "Not the performative kind. Real drills, real assessments. I've already pulled the incident logs for the past year. Half our protocol is built on liability fears instead of actual solutions." "I've noticed," Noah said. She almost smiled. Then, more quietly, "Jenna asked if you'd be willing to visit. Not today, but when you're ready." He paused, then said, "When she's recovered enough to walk again, I'll stop by." Celeste exhaled and gave a nod of her own. It wasn't closure, not yet, but it was honest. He turned to leave. She didn't stop him. Behind him, the windows caught his reflection for a brief moment. A man in a janitor's uniform, carrying more than anyone realized, but finally, no longer unseen. Noah spent the next few days moving through the building differently, not because his steps changed, but because the space around him did. Where once there were glances that slid past him like water, there were now looks that held a second longer, as if people were recalibrating what they thought they knew. Employees nodded as he passed. A few greeted him by name. One young intern even stood when he entered the operations meeting, mistakenly perhaps, but no one corrected it. The uniform was the same. The badge still said janitorial staff. But now when he scanned into secure access points, the green light flashed faster. On his first day in the new role, Noah didn't sit behind a desk. He went floor to floor, clipboard in hand, but not to take notes. He was building memory, evacuation routes, camera blind spots, alarm delays, temperature gradients. He walked the stairwells and rode the elevators, timed response calls, checked how long it took for security to react to a simulated fire alarm in a restricted hallway. They didn't know it was him who triggered it. That was the point. Celeste had given him free rein, and he was using it. He wasn't looking for flaws. He was looking for failure points. Those gaps in human systems where people assume things will work because someone else promised they would. He'd seen it in combat zones. He'd seen it in hospitals. And he'd seen it in this building the moment Jenna had hit the floor. Now, he was setting about quietly ensuring it would never happen again. In the early evening, he returned to the maintenance level. Maya was there, seated on her usual blanket, eating cut-up apples and watching a tiny tablet loaded with cartoons. Her legs were crossed, her bear tucked beside her, arms looped through its missing ear like it was a backpack. She looked up when he entered. "Daddy?" she said, holding up the bear. She learned how to walk now. Noah knelt beside her and gently fixed the torn seam at the bear's neck. "I bet she walks better than most adults," he said. "She has strong legs," Maya whispered, "like you." He smiled and pulled her into his lap. "You want to see the place I'm fixing next?" Her eyes lit up. He carried her up to the 12th floor, the corporate gym and wellness level, mostly unused after hours. He set her down in the open stretching area. Surrounded by glass and hardwood, she wandered toward the window, tiny fingers pressed to the glass. "It's high," she said. "Yep." "Would it hurt if we fell?" Noah's heart stilled for a beat. He walked over and knelt beside her. "We're not falling, Maya. Ever." She nodded as if she already knew, then asked, "Are we safe now?" "Safer than yesterday," he said. She looked out at the city. "I like when you talk like that." "Like what?" "Like you already know." Noah didn't answer, just held her tighter. Later that night, he opened his laptop and ran a simulation. 2 evacuation scenarios, 3 floor response tests, 1 system crash. Each failure was logged and color-coded by response lag. He didn't blame anyone, he blamed assumptions. And the deeper he dug, the more he realized the entire building had been stitched together with reaction, not readiness. It looked good. It passed inspections. It ticked the boxes. But it wasn't built to protect people when things really broke. He sent a report to Celeste's office. 6 pages, bullet points, actionable items. No fluff, no drama. Then he shut the laptop, leaned back, and closed his eyes. He hadn't realized how much of himself he'd buried over the years, how much of his training had calcified into silence, all because it hurt less to be invisible than to be asked to show up for people who didn't want to see him. But now they saw him, and strangely, he didn't resent it. 2 days later, he received a call from Jenna. It was short. Just a thank you and an invitation to visit once the baby was born. Noah didn't say yes or no. He said, "We'll see when the time's right." In the days that followed, he made changes no one noticed until they mattered. He moved the first aid stations 1 door closer to the high-traffic areas. He adjusted the elevator emergency override code. He rewired one of the service panels to override power locks during fire suppression. He wasn't designing policy. He was building reflex, the kind that kicks in when seconds matter and you can't afford to think. Maya watched him sometimes from her spot on the floor, drawing crayon maps of the building with arrows and stars. He didn't correct her. She was learning too. And if the day ever came when someone else collapsed in a place like this, someone else like Jenna, they wouldn't need a miracle. They'd already have a system that knew how to breathe. The mall was quieter on Mondays. Most executives stayed off-site. Foot traffic dipped. The floors echoed more. It was the kind of lull that made the building feel like it exhaled after a long week of pretending. Noah preferred it that way. He used the quiet to test without drawing attention. Today, he focused on the executive restaurant. Not for the food, it wasn't open yet, but for the space. Open floor plan, minimal exits, a room built for ambiance, not evacuation. He walked it slowly, counting steps between chairs and doors. He timed how long it took to reach the elevator, not fast enough, not if someone collapsed again. He pulled out a pocket notebook and started sketching. He didn't carry a tablet or use the building's scheduling apps. He liked paper. It didn't crash. A shadow moved at the edge of his vision. He looked up. Jenna stood at the far end of the room, hands clasped beneath her small belly. She wore loose cotton clothes, pale colors, soft fabric. She looked like someone still healing, but already leaning forward. "I wasn't sure you'd come up here," she said. "I wasn't sure you were back on your feet," he replied. She walked toward him slowly, each step measured. "My OB gave me the go-ahead yesterday. Short walks, no stress." He glanced at the table closest to her, pulled out a chair. She sank into it with a quiet sigh. "You look stronger," he said. She smiled. "I feel it." He returned to his notes. Jenna watched him for a while. "Is it strange being here like this now?" Noah didn't look up. "It's not strange. It's just visible." She tilted her head. "I was always here," he said. "People just didn't see me. Now they do. It's louder." She nodded slowly. "The day I collapsed. I was coming to tell her." Noah stopped writing. "I was going to tell her about the baby, about the fact that I didn't want her money, just her presence. I was tired of the distance. of acting like we were strangers. He set the notebook down. She's trying, he said. I know. She didn't ask for help, Jenna added, softer now. She didn't even know how to. She just watched me fall and froze. She did more than that. I know, Jenna said again. She called you a janitor, then watched you become a lifeline. Noah didn't reply. The truth didn't need a response. I keep thinking about what would have happened if you weren't there, she whispered. He looked at her, and for a moment the soldier in him surfaced, just enough to steady the air. You don't have to think about that, he said. It didn't happen. Her eyes misted, but she blinked it away. I want him to know who you are. Noah's brow creased. Who? The baby, she said. When he's older. I want him to know someone saved his life before he was even born. Someone no one expected to be watching. Noah shook his head gently. Don't tell him about me. Tell him that his mother made it through something terrifying. That she was strong enough to walk again, even when she didn't remember falling. Jenna smiled faintly. Maybe I'll tell him both. He picked up the notebook and flipped the page. I'm making some changes in here, he said. Things no one else will notice until they matter. Like furniture spacing, exit signage, angle of mirrors, placement of epinephrine kits, small things. And they matter? He gave her a look. When seconds decide whether someone lives, everything matters. Jenna leaned back, eyes scanning the room. It looks different when you know what to look for. That's the problem, he said. Most people don't look until they've already lost something. She didn't respond right away, then, do you ever stop preparing? He paused at the question. No, he said, because I already lived the day when I wasn't ready. I swore I'd never let it happen again. They sat in silence for a while. Then she reached into her bag and pulled out a small envelope. Noah stared at it. This isn't a thank you, she said. Not another one. I already gave that. What is it? A name. He didn't open it. She stood, steadied herself with the back of the chair, then turned toward the exit. Halfway to the door, she looked back. You don't have to like it, but I wanted him to carry a piece of what saved us. Then she was gone. Noah stood alone in the room, the envelope resting in his palm. He stared at it for a long moment, then tucked it into his notebook. He'd open it later. For now, there was more work to do, and the room felt quieter again. But not empty, not anymore. The fire drill wasn't scheduled. That was the point. At precisely 3:11 p.m., the building's main alarm triggered a localized evacuation sequence. It started with the east wing of the executive floor, precisely where Noah had flagged the most vulnerable pinch point 2 weeks earlier. A soft chime preceded the voice. Attention, please proceed to the nearest exit. This is a drill. No panic, no smoke, just procedure. Except most didn't treat it like one. Executives stood confused by their desks. 2 assistants glanced around, waiting for someone senior to move first. A group near the conference room didn't even rise. That's what Noah was watching for, from the second-floor surveillance terminal. Mark, the head of security, stood behind him, arms crossed. They're hesitating, he muttered. They're dependent, Noah replied. Leadership first, logic second. He toggled the feed to the main corridor. A janitor was already guiding staff toward the back stairs. A kitchen worker followed with a first aid bag in hand. Part of the new protocol Noah had introduced. No one had asked for it, but no one stopped him from implementing it either. Mark shifted his weight. You think this'll scare them? I think it'll remind them who actually knows how to move when seconds count. Noah watched the second floor clear in under 3 minutes. Fourth floor followed at just over 5. The executive floor dragged into 8. Too long. He took notes in silence. When the final wing cleared, He clicked off the screen and stood. "I want new signage installed on level 12, he said. "Mirror angles updated in corridor 6. And we need audible reinforcement on the east stairwell. No one hears the secondary alarm with the HVAC running." Mark nodded. "You got it." Noah paused before leaving the room. "Also, put in a request for hands-on evacuation training, rotating groups, monthly." Mark raised a brow. "They're not going to like that." "They weren't supposed to like it," Noah said. "They're supposed to survive." He walked out without waiting for agreement. The elevator doors opened on the executive floor. He stepped out, clipboard under one arm, and was met by a wave of irritated murmurs. A group of mid-level managers huddled near the water cooler, shaking heads and muttering complaints about unnecessary disruptions. He walked past them. The complaints quieted. Inside the main conference room, Celeste stood at the head of the table, addressing her department heads. The mood was brittle. No one liked being pulled out of meetings and deadlines. Noah didn't wait to be acknowledged. He stepped into the room, flipped the clipboard open, and placed a single sheet of paper on the table in front of Celeste. "Time log," he said. "Evacuation data. 3 floors under 5 minutes, 1 floor over 8. You can guess which." Someone at the table scoffed. Noah turned. It was Decker, head of commercial real estate, a man who wore his suit like armor and his voice like a badge. "Is this really necessary?" Decker asked. "Fire drills are one thing, but random ambushes in the middle of the workday?" "Yes," Noah said flatly. "I've got teams managing 7-figure clients," Decker snapped. "They don't care if we're scrambling down stairwells because someone wants to play disaster games." Noah stepped forward. "You think this is a game?" Decker blinked. "Because what happened to Jenna wasn't," Noah continued. "And if that had been a real emergency, half your floor wouldn't have made it out before the elevator shut down. But please, tell me again about your clients." The room held its breath. Celeste didn't interrupt. Her eyes were locked on Decker. Noah took a breath. "If the drills are disruptive, good. If they're uncomfortable, better. That's where habits start." He turned to leave. Before he reached the door, Celeste spoke. "Everyone in this room will attend a floor safety briefing this Friday. No exceptions. No proxies." A few mouths opened. She raised a hand. "This is not a request. If the man who saved my daughter thinks we're not ready, we're not. Fix it." Noah didn't look back. He stepped into the hallway and let the door close behind him. Later, back in the service corridor, he found Maya sitting cross-legged by the supply room, coloring a cardboard box with a red crayon. She looked up when he arrived. "Did they run today?" she asked. He knelt beside her. "They tried." "Did they listen?" "Some." She handed him the crayon. "You draw now." He looked at the scribbled mess of staircases and arrows she'd drawn. "What am I drawing?" "The safe part," she said. Noah nodded, and with steady hands he began outlining an exit path through her cardboard world, one that curved around the chaos, bypassed the noise, and led somewhere brighter. The lobby was packed, but no one was speaking. Not loudly, anyway. A dozen executives stood by the windows, arms folded, faces stiff with a kind of cautious anticipation. Security staff were posted near every major entrance, not to block anyone, but because too many people had started asking questions at once, questions they hadn't prepared answers for. At the center of it all was a display, simple, unadorned, but impossible to miss. A glass case sat atop a black pedestal, surrounded by a velvet rope. Inside was a worn, navy blue janitor's uniform, neatly pressed. Next to it, a folded belt. The same one Noah had used to stabilize Jenna on the atrium floor. Noah hadn't put it there. He hadn't even known about it until this morning. The display plaque read, "Honor where it's earned, Noah Raines, combat medic, father, Staff member. No flair, no branding, just truth. He stood at the far end of the lobby, arms crossed, Maya asleep on his shoulder. She was heavier now, growing fast. The bear hung from her hand, dragging gently against his chest. He didn't move closer to the case. He didn't need to. Celeste was already walking toward him, heels silent on the tile. She wore a muted gray suit. No makeup, no entourage. She stopped 2 feet away. "You're not angry?" she asked. He shook his head. "Not my style." "I didn't ask permission." "You didn't need to." They stood like that for a moment, words coming slower now that the noise had settled. "I meant it to be quiet," she said. "No press. Just internal recognition." "You don't need to explain." She hesitated. "I wanted people to remember what happened without the packaging, without twisting it into a redemption story for me. Just what it was." He looked at the glass case. "It's not about the uniform. I know. It's about what people ignore until it saves them." Celeste lowered her eyes. "Will you come to the staff meeting next week?" she asked. "What for?" "I want the safety protocols expanded across all our properties. We'll need a training lead. I'll write the brief. I want you to present it." He adjusted Maya's weight. "I don't do speeches." "You don't have to," she said. "You just have to show up." She waited, watching him. When he didn't answer, she didn't push. Instead, she stepped aside and let him pass. Later, in the service hallway, Noah sat on an overturned milk crate beside the maintenance lockers. Maya was still asleep, now curled in a blanket, her head resting on a bundled hoodie. Across from him sat Jules, the janitor who usually worked night shift. Older guy, half deaf in one ear. Always brought extra snacks in his lunchbox. "I saw it," Jules said. "The thing in the lobby." Noah didn't respond. "Never thought I'd see the day someone with our badge got a glass case instead of a pink slip." Noah let the silence hold. "You think it's going to last?" Jules asked. "The respect, I mean." Noah looked down at his hands. "It's not about lasting. It's about shifting, just enough to remind people." Jules chewed on that for a while. Then, "You staying in the field?" "For now." "Good. You make the rest of us look good?" Noah almost smiled. Almost. That night in the apartment, he laid Maya gently onto her bed. She didn't stir. Her bear was already nestled beside her pillow, its one good eye facing the ceiling like it was keeping watch. He moved to the kitchen and opened a small drawer near the fridge. Inside was the envelope Jenna had given him. He'd left it unopened for weeks. Now he slid a finger under the seal and pulled out a single card. A birth announcement. It was simple. White paper, black ink. Luca James Valen, born at 6:02 a.m., 6 pounds, 4 ounces, healthy, breathing strong. At the bottom, written in Jenna's looping script, named after the man who gave him his first breath. Noah stared at it for a long time. He didn't cry. He didn't smile. He just breathed, slow, quiet, steady, like someone who'd finally exhaled a weight he didn't know he'd been holding. He slipped the card into the drawer and turned off the kitchen light. Outside, the city pulsed in quiet rhythms. Inside, everything was still. Not finished, but finally at peace. The sun was rising through the atrium glass, bleeding amber light across the marble floor. The building hadn't opened yet. No chatter, no clipped footsteps, just the quiet hum of the HVAC and the slow warmth of morning beginning to stretch into the lobby. Noah stood alone in front of the display case. The belt inside looked smaller now, more fragile. The uniform still carried its creases. The plaque remained unchanged. He stared at it without blinking. He wasn't here for nostalgia. He was here to say goodbye. Not to the building, not to the work, but to the version of himself that used to walk past this glass without a second thought, The one who stayed invisible on purpose, the one who believed quiet survival was all that was left. Behind him, Maya's laughter echoed softly. She was playing with Jenna's baby in the lounge nearby, stacking foam blocks on a plastic mat while the boy tried to gum them into submission. Jenna sat cross-legged beside them, her hair pulled into a loose braid. Her posture was lighter now, healing, not recovering. She caught Noah watching. "You're allowed to look happy, you know," she said. He walked over, crouched beside the mat. "I am," he said. "I'm just not used to showing it." Luca reached out with both arms and grabbed a block with surprising determination. Maya giggled and gave him another one. Jenna smiled, then said more quietly, "I think about that day a lot." "I try not to," she nodded, "but it matters. It changed everything." He looked at her. "It changed you. It changed all of us." She stood and stretched, then looked toward the display. "Are you really stepping back?" "Consultant roles winding down. I trained the team, set the drills. Everything's in place now." She tilted her head. "So what's next?" Noah didn't answer right away. Then, softly, something quieter. He stood and watched Maya help Luca stack another block. He let the sound of their voices fill the silence between them. Later that afternoon, he stopped by the main office and dropped off his access badge. The director offered to throw him a farewell gathering. He declined. Instead, he visited each floor one last time: the security team in the basement, the maintenance staff near the loading docks, the night janitors, half asleep with their radios crackling. He didn't say much, just nodded, shook hands. He left the building like he'd entered it on his first day, unannounced, unnoticed, and on his own time. But the difference now was, people watched him go, and they remembered. 3 weeks later, he stood at a community center, hammer in hand, helping a volunteer. Coordinator install a set of emergency response lockers, one of his own designs. He'd drawn the schematic on a diner napkin 2 years ago. Now it was real. Maya watched from the doorway, hugging her bear, a new one. This one had both eyes stitched in tight. She'd picked it herself. "Almost done?" she asked. "Almost," he said. She nodded and wandered back into the hallway, humming a song she hadn't learned from him. He tightened the last bolt, stepped back, and checked the airflow clearance. Everything aligned, everything ready, no flash, no applause. Just another space made safer for the people no one saw until it was too late. That night, he read Maya to sleep, then sat on the balcony and let the wind pass over his face. The sky was clear, the kind of dark that felt clean, not hollow. He closed his eyes, breathed deep, and for once he didn't feel like something was waiting to go wrong. He just felt here, alive, whole, and watching over everything that mattered, just the way it should be. Subscribe and don't miss our next story. Boss fired the single dad for being late until the news showed him saving a burning car victim. And tell me in the comments, what injustice should we tackle next?